want to say next up is the Deion Sanders of the Republican caucus, Ted Cruz.
That may be the kindest introduction I have ever gotten in my life. I will say to the senator from New Jersey, he may find that introduction played in attack ads against him in his home state. So I apologize for that ahead of time. Welcome to all the members of this panel. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony on this topic, which I think is an exceptionally important topic. College sports are amazing. They are something that pulls us together. We're in a time where it seems we can't agree on what time of day it is. We're yelling and fighting over everything. And yet every week, millions of Americans come together and they cheer for their schools and they stand unified, and no one cares what race, what ethnicity, no one cares what political party they are, no one cares what religion they are. They stand together and they cheer. And that's important. I get enormous joy cheering for Texas schools every week. And that's true all across the country. College athletics has also been an incredible avenue for millions of young men and millions of young women to get a great education. Young men and women who might not otherwise have an opportunity to go to college, to have their college paid for, and to get all of the benefits of participating in organized sports. Most college athletes will never play pro ball. They're not going to be on the cover of Wheaties box. They're not going to get a Nike contract, but they are learning discipline and teamwork and sportsmanship, and they're learning to be gracious winners, and they're learning to be gracious losers, and they're learning all sorts of skills that will help them every day of their life. And I'm very worried about the state of college athletics right now. In addition to serving on the Judiciary Committee, I'm also the ranking member of the Senate Commerce Committee, which has jurisdiction over athletics. And as each of the witnesses know, I've spent much of the past year visiting and listening to stakeholders, listening to the NCAA, listening to conferences, listening to universities and institutions, listening to athletes. And across the board, I'm hearing real concern about the state of college athletics right now, that it is the Wild West, and that there is a real risk that if Congress doesn't act quickly, that we risk doing enormous damage to a system that is providing enormous benefit to millions of Americans. I've introduced draft legislation to address this issue. And the legislation I've introduced takes a different approach than some of the other pieces of legislation that have been introduced, and lots of members of this body have introduced legislation. There's a lot of interest in it. My legislation protects NIL rights front and center. I think it's important. I think it's right that athletes deserve to enjoy the fruit of their hard labors. And if their skills are generating millions of dollars and are a massive economic powerhouse, it's only right that these young men and young women should enjoy significant fruits from their hard work and their performance. But at the same time, I don't think anyone wants to see a world where you have a few giant schools with all the money that buy all the top athletes and we destroy competitiveness across college athletics. One of the great things about March Madness is 64 teams, and any one of them can win in any given year. That makes it incredible fun to watch. I think it is also important that we protect college athletes across the board. So it's not just, football and basketball at big marquee programs, but it's Division II, Division III schools. It's all sorts of non-revenue sports that are really important, but are not going to produce millions of dollars and be on TV nationally. So I'd like to ask a couple of questions to each of the witnesses quickly. Number one, do each of you believe it is important that Congress act and provide a uniform national standard rather than 50 states having 50 different standards? Do you think it's important that Congress ask? And I'm just going to ask for a yes or no.
Yes.
Yes.
No. Yes.
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 Okay. A second question, and a difference between the way my bill approaches it and other bills, is that my bill empowers the NCAA to work with conferences, to work with universities, to set the rules of the road. I think that's a better solution than the federal government stepping in, either an existing government agency or a brand new government agency. I think nobody wants to see Congress and politicians deciding what roughing the passer is. And bad things will happen, I believe, if government takes over college sports. So I'd like to ask everyone on the panel again to answer yes or no, or actually not yes or no, but do you believe the NCAA should be setting the rules, or do you believe the federal government should be setting the rules? Governor?
Well, that's kind of an easy one for me, Senator. I'll go with the NCAA on that one.
I figured that.
NCAA.
I don't have an opinion on that.
Okay.
The federal government, by extension of establishing a third party.
Okay.
The devil's in the details, but we would be open to the NCAA.
The NCAA in compliance with existing federal laws.
Okay.
The NCAA, especially if they can figure out targeting.
Okay. I'm confident Congress cannot. I don't understand who gets called for targeting, but I know it pisses me off when it's against my schools. All right, last question. There's a big debate over whether student athletes should be classified as employees or not. I believe that would be a very serious mistake. It would subject scholarships to taxation. It would subject student athletes to all sorts of wage and hour regulations. It would mean if suddenly you have a receiver who drops a bunch of passes, you can be fired and lose your scholarship. All of that seems really bad for college athletics, not to mention the cost that it would impose on smaller programs that I think would lead to eliminating smaller programs. Going down the panel, do you believe student athletes should be treated as employees, yes or no?
No.
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 Yes for FBS football, Division I men and women's basketball.
No.
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 Mr. Chairman, I would ask unanimous consent to enter into the record two different letters that I have here. One is a letter dated October 13th, 2023 from 4 historically black athletic conferences saying any legislative framework classifying student athletes as employees would have a staggering impact on our athletic program in schools. An employment model for college sports is simply not the answer. And then secondly is a letter from the chair of the Division I Student Athletes Advisory Committee, which represents nearly 190,000 student athletes, noting that student athletes should not be employees of their institution.
Without objection, so ordered.